The champagne glass shattered against the wall, missing Zara's head by inches. She didn't flinch anymore. 3 years of living with Michael had taught her that flinching only made him angrier. That showing fear was like pouring gasoline on flames. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Michael's voice was ice wrapped in venom as he grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her dark skin hard enough to leave marks. "Walking around like you're somebody. You're nothing, Zara. Nothing without me." The Lagos-born woman stared at the floor of their Seoul apartment, her natural hair falling forward to hide the tears she refused to let him see. Tomorrow was supposed to be their wedding day. Tomorrow she was supposed to promise forever to the man who had systematically destroyed every piece of her soul. But tonight, something inside her finally broke. Not in the way he wanted. No, tonight something ancient and powerful awakened in her chest. A voice that whispered one word over and over. "Run! Welcome back to the channel, family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because today's story is going to take you on an emotional roller coaster you won't forget. We're talking about abuse, escape, accidental marriage, and a redemption so powerful it'll have you believing in second chances. Stick around until the end because this story has twists that will leave you speechless. Now, let's dive in. 3 years ago, Zara had arrived in Seoul with dreams bigger than the sky. A 23-year-old Nigerian woman with a degree in international business and a heart full of hope. But Seoul was colder than she expected. Not just the weather, but the way people looked at her. The way opportunities slipped through her fingers like water. That's when Michael found her. Or maybe she found him. A Korean-American businessman with perfect English, a charming smile, and promises that sounded like salvation. He offered her a job at his company, took her to dinners, made her feel seen in a city where she had become invisible. "You're special, Zara," he used to say, his hand warm on hers. Different from everyone else. She should have known that. Different was just another word for isolated. That special meant easier to control. The first time he hit her, he cried afterward, begged for forgiveness, blamed the stress of work, the pressure of deadlines. Zara, raised to be forgiving, raised to believe in second chances, wrapped her arms around him and said it was okay. It was never okay again. The slaps became punches. The insults became daily sermons about her worthlessness. He controlled her money, her phone, her friendships. One by one, he cut away every connection she had until the only voice in her world was his. "No one else will want you," he'd whisper after every beating. "You should be grateful I stay." Now, the night before their wedding, Zara sat on the bathroom floor, her face swollen, her body aching, staring at the white dress hanging on the door. The dress that felt less like a symbol of love and more like a burial shroud. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother back in Lagos. "So proud of you, my daughter. Tomorrow you become a wife." The tears came then, hot and shameful. How could she tell her mother the truth? That her daughter's fairy tale was actually a nightmare? That the man they all believed was her savior was actually her executioner? Zara's hands trembled as she opened the cabinet beneath the sink. Hidden behind cleaning supplies was the bottle of soju she'd bought weeks ago. She'd never been a drinker, but tonight, she needed to feel anything other than this crushing despair. The first sip burned. The second one burned less. By the fifth, the world had softened around the edges, blurry and distant. "I can't marry him," she whispered to her reflection. "I'd rather die than spend my life with him." The thought sobered her for a moment, sharp and clear. She would rather die, but why should she be the one to die? Why not her life with him instead? The decision came suddenly, violently, like a storm breaking through clouds. She grabbed her purse, shoved her feet into shoes, and walked out of the apartment. Michael was passed out drunk on the couch, snoring, oblivious. The streets of Seoul blurred past her as she stumbled through Gangnam, her vision swimming, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. Every step took her further from Michael. Every breath tasted like freedom. She didn't know where she was going, only that she was going away. The skyscraper appeared before her like a mirage, all glass and steel and glittering lights. The lobby doors were open, some kind of late-night event happening inside. Zara walked in, desperate for somewhere to hide, somewhere to think. Instead, she walked straight into chaos. The conference room was filled with men in expensive suits, their voices raised, papers flying across a massive table. At the center of the storm sat a man who made every other person in the room look small. He was Korean, but his presence transcended nationality. Tall, with sharp features that looked carved from stone, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than Zara's entire year's rent. His eyes, when they landed on her, were the color of midnight, cold and assessing. "Who the hell is this?" someone barked in Korean. Zara froze. In her drunken haze, she'd stumbled into what was clearly a private meeting. She tried to back away, but strong hands gripped her shoulders, pushing her forward. "Wait," another voice said urgently in English. "She's the interpreter, right? The backup they sent?" "No, I'm not," Zara started, but the room erupted again. "We don't have time for this," someone shouted. "The Korean investor needs a translator. The deal is falling apart." Before Zara could protest, someone shoved papers into her hands. Her eyes couldn't focus on the words, the letters swimming on the page. People were talking at her in Korean and English, voices overlapping, urgent and angry. "Sign here. Just sign. We need someone to witness this merger." "But I don't... Please. Just sign. The boss is losing patience." Through her alcohol-soaked confusion, Zara saw what looked like a lifeline. If she signed whatever this was, they'd leave her alone. She could disappear into this corporate chaos and never have to walk down that aisle tomorrow. So she signed. Her signature, bold and desperate, scrawled across documents she couldn't read. The room fell silent. Then the man in black, the one who'd been watching her with those obsidian eyes, leaned back in his chair and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Well," he said in perfect English, his voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "It seems we have an agreement." Zara swayed on her feet, the room tilting around her. "What did I just sign?" His smile widened. "Your future." The world went dark. Sunlight pierced through her eyelids like knives. Zara groaned, her head pounding with the worst hangover of her life. The sheets beneath her were silk. The mattress was softer than clouds. Nothing about this was familiar. She sat up too fast, immediately regretting it as the room spun. This wasn't Michael's apartment. This was a bedroom the size of her entire childhood home back in Lagos. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's skyline. Everything screamed wealth in a way that made her stomach turn. On the nightstand lay a stack of papers, official-looking documents with stamps and seals. Zara's hands shook as she picked them up, her eyes struggling to focus on the words. Marriage certificate. Her name was there, Zara Okafor. And beside it, Jung Dae-Hyun. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. Jung Dae-Hyun." The name sent ice through her veins. Even she, isolated as she'd been, had heard that name. The business guru, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, the youngest self-made billionaire in South Korea, the man whose photograph appeared in Forbes and Fortune, always unsmiling, always intimidating, the man known for destroying his competitors without mercy. The door opened. Zara's head snapped up, her heart hammering. He walked in like he owned the world. Because, she realized with growing horror, he probably did. Jung Dae-Hyun in person was even more intimidating than his photographs. Tall, with a presence that sucked the air from the room. His suit was impeccable, charcoal gray that highlighted his broad shoulders, but it was his eyes that terrified her. Intelligent, calculating, missing nothing. "You're awake," he said, his English flawless. "Good. We have things to discuss." Zara clutched the marriage certificate. "This is a mistake. Last night I was drunk. I didn't know what I was signing." "Ignorance isn't a legal defense." He moved closer, each step measured and deliberate. "You signed a binding contract, Miss Okafor. Or should I say, Mrs. Jung. I'm not your wife. The Korean government disagrees." He gestured to the papers in her trembling hands. "That's a legal marriage certificate, properly filed and registered. Congratulations." The room tilted. Zara thought she might vomit. But why? Why would you marry a complete stranger? For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, perhaps. "I needed a wife for a business merger. The investor I was meeting requires all his partners to be married. He believes in family values." His tone made it clear what he thought of that. "My assistant was supposed to arrange a contract marriage with a suitable candidate. Instead, you stumbled in drunk, signed the papers, and now here we are. Then divorce me. Undo this." Dae-Hyun pulled out his phone, showing her something on the screen. The merger was completed this morning. 50 billion won are now in motion. The investor has been notified of my marriage. If I divorce you within the next 6 months, the deal falls apart, and I lose everything I've worked for." Zara stared at him, understanding dawning like horror. "So I'm trapped here?" "We both are." His smile was cold. "For the next 6 months, you will play the role of my devoted wife. You'll attend events, smile for cameras, and convince the world that we're madly in love. In return, you'll live in luxury most people only dream of. And if I refuse?" He leaned down, his face inches from hers, and she smelled his cologne, expensive and intoxicating. "Then I'll make your life so miserable. You'll wish you'd never been born. I didn't build my empire by accepting failure. Mrs. Jung. You signed those papers. You made a deal. Now you'll honor it." Every instinct screamed at her to run. But where would she go? Back to Michael? Her stomach turned at the thought. At least Dae-Hyun hadn't hit her. Yet. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months, he confirmed. "Try not to embarrass me." He left, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like a prison, cell locking. Zara looked down at the marriage certificate, at her name next to his, and realized she'd escaped one cage only to land in another. But this time, her captor wore an expensive suit and ruled the business world with an iron fist. The first week was hell. Dae-Hyun's mansion was beautiful in the way museums are beautiful. Cold, untouchable, meant to be admired but never truly lived in. Staff moved through the halls like ghosts, efficient and silent. Nobody spoke to Zara directly. She tried to leave. Of course she tried. The first time, she made it as far as the front gate before 2 security guards, polite but immovable, turned her around. "Mrs. Jung, Mr. Jung has asked that you remain on the property for your safety." Safety. As if the bars on her cage were for her protection. The second time she tried a side entrance. Same result. The third time, she didn't even make it out of the house. Dae-Hyun appeared in the hallway, his expression thunderous. "Are you stupid or suicidal?" he demanded, grabbing her arm. Not roughly like Michael used to, but firmly enough to stop her. "You signed a contract. You gave your word. I was drunk. I don't care if you were unconscious. The law doesn't care. You're my wife for 6 months, and you will act like it." Zara jerked her arm free, fire blazing in her chest. "I'm not your property." "No," he agreed, his voice dropping dangerously low. "You're my employee, and if you want to survive this marriage, you'll learn to do your job." Her job, as it turned out, was to become someone else entirely. The transformation began the next morning. Stylists invaded her room with racks of designer clothes, makeup cases, and jewelry that probably cost more than her parents' house. They circled her like vultures, critiquing everything. "Her skin is beautiful, but we need to even the tone here. The hair needs professional treatment. Has she ever had her eyebrows shaped?" Zara sat through it all, numb. They plucked and painted and dressed her like a doll. When they finally let her look in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. The woman staring back was elegant, sophisticated, with flawless makeup and a designer dress that hugged her curves. She looked like she belonged in Dae-Hyun's world. She looked nothing like herself. "Better," Dae-Hyun said from the doorway. His eyes swept over her, clinical and detached. "But looking the part isn't enough. You need to act it too." What followed were the most humiliating weeks of Zara's life. Worse than anything Michael had done, because at least Michael's cruelty was personal. Dae-Hyun's was coldly professional. He hired tutors to teach her proper etiquette, how to hold a wine glass, which fork to use, how to make small talk with billionaires' wives without revealing she had no idea what they were talking about. "You're representing me now," Dae-Hyun said during one particularly brutal lesson where she'd used the wrong spoon. "Every mistake you make reflects on me. Do better." Zara wanted to throw the soup in his face. Instead, she picked up the correct spoon and tried again. The worst part was the acting. They had to convince people they were in love. That meant Dae-Hyun touching her in public, his hand on her waist, his fingers intertwined with hers. It meant smiling at him like he was her world, when in reality, he was just another man controlling her life. But there was one crucial difference between Dae-Hyun and Michael. Dae-Hyun never raised his hand to her. He was cold, demanding, impossible to please. But when she flinched the first time he moved too quickly near her, he'd frozen, his eyes narrowing. "I don't hit women," he'd said quietly. Whatever you've been through, you won't experience that here. Zara hadn't known what to say to that, so she'd said nothing. Their first public appearance together was at a charity gala. Zara stood in front of the mirror, hardly recognizing herself in the emerald gown that cost more than a car. Diamonds glittered at her throat, borrowed from some collection Dae-Hyun owned. Ready? He asked, appearing behind her in a tuxedo that should be illegal. No. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Good. Honesty. Hold on to that. The gala was overwhelming. Cameras flashed as they walked the red carpet. Reporters shouted questions in Korean and English. Zara kept her chin up and her smile fixed, just like she'd been taught. Inside, the cream of Seoul's society mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. Every woman was beautiful, every man was powerful, and every single person turned to stare when Dae-Hyun entered with his new wife. The whispers started immediately. Who is she? Not Korean. Where did he find her? Dae-Hyun's hand tightened on her waist, a silent command. Ignore them. They made the rounds, Dae-Hyun introducing her to business partners and investors. Zara shook hands and smiled until her face hurt. Most people were polite, if curious. A few were outright hostile, their questions barbed with prejudice wrapped in politeness. Then they met Chairman Kim, an older man with a political background and eyes like a snake. Ah, Jung, your new wife, he said in English, his smile not reaching his eyes. Quite unexpected. Unexpected how? Zara asked, her voice sweet as honey. Chairman Kim's smile tightened. Well, you know, different. Exotic. There it was. The racism served with a smile. Dae-Hyun's jaw tensed, but before he could speak, Zara did. Exotic, she repeated thoughtfully. Like a rare jewel, you mean? Something precious and unique that stands out in a room full of ordinary stones? The chairman blinked, caught off guard. Zara's smile sharpened. Thank you, Chairman Kim. I do try to be memorable. Silence rippled around them. Then someone laughed, and the tension broke. As they walked away, Dae-Hyun leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. That was either brilliant or suicidal, maybe both. Zara muttered. For the first time, she saw something like respect flicker in his eyes. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. By the time they returned to the mansion, Zara's feet ached from her heels and her face hurt from smiling. She collapsed on the couch in what Dae-Hyun called the casual living room, though there was nothing casual about furniture that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Dae-Hyun appeared with 2 glasses of wine. He handed her one, then sat on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining careful distance. You did well tonight, he said. Zara took a sip of wine, letting the compliment wash over her. You've been here less than 2 weeks, and you're already handling Seoul's elite better than people who've trained for years. I learned from the best, she said bitterly, thinking of Michael. How to read a room. How to know when someone's about to strike. How to protect yourself, with words when you can't protect yourself with anything else. Dae-Hyun's eyes sharpened. Who taught you that? Zara set down her wine glass. My ex-fiancé. The man I was supposed to marry the night I stumbled into your meeting. You ran away from your wedding? From my execution, she corrected. He spent 3 years beating me, controlling me, destroying me piece by piece. Tomorrow I was supposed to promise him forever. Instead I got drunk and accidentally married you. The silence that followed was heavy. Dae-Hyun stared at her, something unreadable crossing his face. Did he touch you? His voice was very quiet, very dangerous. Every day. His name. Why? Dae-Hyun's jaw clenched. Because no one touches what's mine and walks away unscathed. I'm not yours, Zara said automatically. For 6 months you are. That makes him my problem. He stood, pulling out his phone. What's his name, Zara? She should have said no, should have told him to mind his business. But the part of her that still flinched at shadows, that still heard Michael's voice in her nightmares, spoke first. Michael Park. Dae-Hyun made a call, speaking rapidly in Korean. When he hung up, he looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. He won't bother you again. What did you do? Let's just say his work visa is being reviewed, and his business accounts are under investigation for tax fraud. He'll be too busy dealing with his own problems to worry about you. Zara stared at him. In one phone call, Dae-Hyun had done what she couldn't do in 3 years, made Michael go away. Dae-Hyun moved to the window, his back to her. Because I don't like bullies. And because for the next 6 months, your safety is my responsibility. It wasn't love. It wasn't even kindness, really. It was pragmatism, protecting his investment. But it was more than anyone else had done for her in years. That night, Zara lay in her massive bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if maybe, just maybe, this cage might be different from the last one. The nightmares came anyway. Zara woke up screaming, her body drenched in sweat, her hands clawing at invisible attackers. In her dream, Michael had found her. He was dragging her back, his fingers digging into her arms, his voice in her ear. Did you really think you could escape me? Strong hands gripped her shoulders. She lashed out, fighting, sobbing. Zara, wake up! The voice was different, deeper, more controlled. Her eyes flew open. Dae-Hyun knelt beside her bed, his hair mussed, wearing only pajama pants. His hands were on her shoulders, firm but not painful, holding her steady. You're safe, he said quietly. It was a dream, just a dream. Zara's breathing came in ragged gasps. The room slowly came back into focus. Not Michael's apartment, Dae-Hyun's mansion. I'm sorry, she managed. I didn't mean to wake you. You were screaming. He released her shoulders but didn't move away. How often does this happen? Every night since I left him. Something shifted in Dae-Hyun's expression. Without a word, he stood and walked around to the other side of the bed. Before Zara could ask what he was doing, he lay down on top of the covers, maintaining careful distance between them. What are you doing? She asked. You need sleep. So do I. I have meetings starting at 6. He settled against the pillow, his voice matter of fact. Having someone else in the room might help. If it doesn't, tell me, and I'll leave. Zara opened her mouth to argue, but the words died. The truth was, she was exhausted, terrified of closing her eyes again. And somehow, having Dae-Hyun there, solid and real and awake, made the darkness less frightening. Thank you, she whispered. He didn't respond. Within minutes, his breathing had evened out, deep and steady. Somehow, listening to it, Zara found herself drifting off too. She slept through the night for the first time in months. When she woke, Dae-Hyun was gone, but there was a note on his pillow. Sleep as long as you need. Someone will bring you breakfast. It was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in 3 years. The weeks that followed developed an unexpected rhythm. During the day, they were the perfect power couple. Dae-Hyun would take her to business lunches, gallery openings, exclusive events where they played their parts flawlessly. Zara learned to navigate his world, and to her surprise, she discovered she was good at it. She had a mind for business, something she'd never gotten to explore when Michael controlled every aspect of her life. Now, sitting in on Dae-Hyun's meetings, she found herself making observations, asking questions that made his business partners pause and reconsider their strategies. You have good instincts, Dae-Hyun said one evening after a particularly successful negotiation. Have you ever considered business school? Zara laughed bitterly. I had a degree in international business, before Michael made me quit my job and depend on him entirely. That was a mistake. His, not yours. Dae-Hyun handed her a folder. I'm investing in a startup, tech company, female founder, good product but struggling with international markets. Look over their proposal and tell me what you think. Zara stared at the folder. You want my opinion? I want your analysis. By Monday. It was a test. She knew that. But it was also the first time in years someone had treated her like she had a brain. She spent the weekend poring over the proposal, making notes, researching market trends. When she presented her analysis to Dae-Hyun Monday morning, his eyebrows rose. This is thorough. You sound surprised. I'm impressed. There's a difference. He leaned back in his office chair. I'm going to make you an offer, Zara. For the next 6 months. You're my wife in public, but in private, I want you to work as my business consultant. I'll pay you a separate salary. Put it in an account only you can access. When our marriage ends, you'll have both money and experience to start fresh wherever you want. Zara's throat tightened. Why would you do that? Because wasting talent offends me, and because you deserve better than being anyone's decoration. His eyes held hers. What do you say? For the first time since arriving in his world, Zara smiled. A real smile. I say yes. That night, the nightmares came again. But so did Dae-Hyun, settling on the opposite side of her bed without being asked. It became their unspoken routine. He never touched her, never crossed the invisible line down the center of the mattress, but his presence kept the demons at bay. Zara never asked why he did it. She was afraid of the answer. 3 months into their arrangement, something shifted. Zara noticed it first in the small things. The way Dae-Hyun's hand would linger a moment too long on her waist at events. The way his eyes tracked her across a room. The way he smiled, actually smiled, when she made a clever observation during a business meeting. She noticed because she was doing the same thing, watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his suits fit his shoulders. The rare moments when his cold facade cracked and she glimpsed the man underneath. Intelligent, driven, but also lonely in a way she recognized. The realization hit her one night as they lay in the dark, the city glowing beyond the windows. She'd started to care about him. Not as her captor or her employer, but as something more dangerous. As if sensing her thoughts, Dae-Hyun spoke into the darkness. Can't sleep? Just thinking. About? How strange this all is. 6 months ago I was trapped in one life. Now I'm trapped in another. But this one doesn't feel like a trap anymore. Silence stretched between them. Then, it's not supposed to be a trap, Zara. It's a contract. A business arrangement. Is that what you keep telling yourself? It's the truth. Then why do you come to my room every night? Why do you make sure I eat? Why did you spend 2 hours last week teaching me about stock market trends when you could have been doing literally anything else? Because you're my responsibility. No. Zara turned to face him in the darkness. A responsibility is something you do out of obligation. This is something else. She could see his profile against the city lights. The sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. Don't, he said quietly. Don't what? Don't make this more complicated than it is. In 3 months this marriage ends. You get your money and your freedom. I get my business deal. We both move on. Is that what you want? It's what we agreed to. But he didn't sound certain anymore. The next morning, everything changed. They had a breakfast meeting with a group of international investors. Zara wore a red power suit that made her feel invincible. She'd prepared thoroughly, ready to present her analysis of the Southeast Asian market. Everything was going perfectly until Michael walked in. The blood drained from Zara's face. He was supposed to be dealing with his legal troubles. He was supposed to be far away from her. Michael's eyes locked onto hers, and the smile that spread across his face was pure evil. Zara, he said, his voice carrying across the restaurant. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you, baby. Dae-Hyun's hand found hers under the table, squeezing once. A silent message. I've got you. I'm sorry, Zara said to the confused investors. I don't know this man. Don't know me? Michael laughed, pulling out his phone. These say otherwise. He showed pictures. Zara and Michael together, smiling, looking happy. Pictures from before everything went wrong. This is my fiancé, Michael told the investors. We had a little fight before our wedding, and she ran off. But I forgive her. His eyes, when they met Zara's, were full of malice. Come home, baby. Where you belong. The investors were murmuring. Confused, Zara felt the room closing in, her carefully built new life crumbling. Then Dae-Hyun stood. Mr. Park, he said, his voice glacial. I'm going to give you exactly one chance to leave quietly. Or what? Michael sneered. You'll call security? I have every right to talk to my fiancé. She's not your fiancé. Dae-Hyun pulled out his phone, displaying the marriage certificate on screen. She's my wife. Legally married. Which makes you guilty of harassment. Michael's face went red. That's fake. Some kind of scam. I assure you it's quite real. Dae-Hyun's smile was sharp as a blade. I also assure you that if you come near my wife again, I will destroy you. Not just legally, financially, socially. I will erase you so thoroughly, people will forget you ever existed. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Every investor was staring, fascinated and terrified. Michael's bravado faltered. He looked at Zara one last time, and she saw it in his eyes. The realization that he'd lost. This isn't over, he spat. but he was already backing toward the door. Yes, Dae-Hyun said quietly. It is. Security escorted Michael out. The investors, after a moment of shocked silence, pretended nothing had happened. Business continued, but under the table, Dae-Hyun's hand never left Zara's. That night, back at the mansion, Zara finally broke. All the fear, the relief, the emotions she'd been holding back, came pouring out in harsh sobs. Dae-Hyun found her curled on the couch, crying into her hands. Without a word, he sat beside her and pulled her against his chest. He can't hurt you, he murmured into her hair. Zara choked out. Why do you care so much? Because... He stopped, his arms tightening around her. Because you matter to me, more than the business deal, more than the contract. You matter, Zara. She pulled back, looking up at him with tear-stained eyes. This was supposed to be temporary. I know. We were supposed to walk away in 3 months. I know. So, what are we doing? Dae-Hyun's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness she'd never experienced from him. Something stupid, something dangerous, something I swore I'd never do. What? Falling in love. The words hung in the air between them. Then Zara was pulling him down, her lips meeting his in a kiss that tasted like tears and hope, and the future they both desperately wanted but were terrified to claim. The 3 months passed like a fever dream. Zara and Dae-Hyun's relationship transformed from contract to something real. They still maintained separate bedrooms, but most nights ended with them falling asleep together, talking until dawn about everything and nothing. Zara thrived in her new role as business consultant. Dae-Hyun had been right. She had a gift for it. Together, they made an unstoppable team. He was all strategy and logic. She was intuition and creativity. They balanced each other perfectly. I got an offer, Zara said one evening as they reviewed contracts in his study. A consulting firm in Singapore wants me to join them. Dae-Hyun's pen stopped moving. Are you accepting? Our contract ends in 2 weeks. I'll need a job. You could stay. Work for me permanently. As what? Your employee? Your wife? She set down her own papers. We need to talk about what happens when the contract ends. I know. So? What do you want, Dae-Hyun? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walking to the window overlooking Seoul. I want you to stay. Not because of a contract. Not because of business. I want you to stay because you want to be here with me. Zara's heart hammered. That sounds an awful lot like a real marriage. Maybe it does. He turned to face her. I never believed in love. I thought it was a weakness, a distraction, but you've proven me wrong about everything. You're the strongest person I know, and you make me want to be better than I am. Dae-Hyun, let me finish. He crossed to her, kneeling beside her chair. I'm not asking for your answer now. Think about it. The Singapore job, or staying here with me. A real marriage, not a contract. Choose whatever makes you happy, Zara. But know that if you stay, I will spend every day proving that you made the right choice. Tears pricked her eyes. I don't need to think about it. I already know my answer. His face went very still. And I choose you. I choose us. She cupped his face in her hands. You gave me back my strength when I thought I'd lost it forever. You made me remember who I was before anyone tried to break me. I love you, Dae-Hyun. Not the business guru, not the billionaire, just you. The kiss they shared was different from all the others. It was a promise, a commitment, a vow stronger than any paperwork. When they finally pulled apart, Dae-Hyun was smiling, really smiling, in a way she'd never seen before. Then marry me, he said. For real this time. Not drunk, not accidentally. Marry me because you choose to. Zara laughed through her tears. We're already married. That was a business transaction. I'm asking for the real thing. What do you say? I say yes. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding, 6 months after their accidental marriage certificate, was the opposite of that chaotic night. It was small and intimate, just close friends and family. Zara's parents flew in from Lagos, tears streaming down their faces as they watched their daughter marry for love. As Zara walked down the aisle in a dress she'd actually chosen this time, toward a man who saw her as an equal partner, she thought about how strange life could be, how the worst night of her life had led to the best thing that ever happened to her. Dae-Hyun took her hands, his eyes shining with emotion. Hello, Mrs. Jung. Hello, Mr. Jung. Ready to do this properly? With you? Always. Years later, Zara would stand in their home office, now officially the COO of Jung Enterprises, and marvel at how far she'd come. From a broken woman fleeing an abuser, to a successful business executive married to her best friend and the love of her life, their daughter would ask, "How did you and Daddy meet?" And Zara would smile and say, "That's quite a story, sweetheart. It started with the worst night of my life and ended with the best decision I ever made. I accidentally married your father. And it turned out to be the best accident that ever happened to me. Because sometimes, the universe works in mysterious ways. Sometimes, rock bottom is just a foundation for building something beautiful. And sometimes, the scariest leap of faith leads to the softest landing." Zara had learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about finding someone who helped you heal, who celebrated your strength, who stood beside you as an equal partner in all things. She'd escaped one monster and accidentally married a man who turned out to be exactly what she needed. Not a savior, but a partner. Someone who recognized her worth and helped her reclaim the power she'd always had. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought about Zara and Dae-Hyun's journey. Should I make more stories like this? Let me know. And remember, sometimes the detours in life lead us exactly where we need to be. Until next time, family. Thanks for watching.